Assumptions gone wild. Have you ever been stuck in an assumption that didn't seem like an assumption? It seemed like the truth or what was real, something that you had some sort of evidence for. But when you teased it apart and wound it back, it was really just some connections that you'd made in your head without actually checking in with the other person or the situation. The crazy thing about assumptions is, number one, they seem real. So they're very difficult at times to tease apart, to identify as an assumption. The other thing, number two, is they compound. You make one assumption about something, and then as more information or experiences happen, more information falls into the assumption pit, and then you make more assumptions based on the original assumption and the new data that's then, of course, been filtered through the original assumption. This is normal as human. But let's check in and see what happens when we treat our assumptions as truth. I'm going to ask you to try something on, just like you would try on a jacket if you go to the store, see if it fits. I'm going to tell you a story and see where you fit in the story. Which part do you play or have you played, or maybe both parts? And even if the content isn't exactly the same, see where you find yourself in the context of the story. You ready? Here we go. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she had made an assumption that her boss was withholding any kind of increase in salary for the year. She didn't check this out. She'd never asked him or checked in. She just saw the data, hadn't heard anything, and made the assumption that that was true. And with that lens in mind, the next month, she's watching everything he does and everything he doesn't do through this lens of he's stingy, he's not generous, he is withholding. And no matter what happened, whether it was communication in a meeting or information in an email, everything got filtered through this assumption. By the end of the month, she's so frustrated and finally sits down to have a conversation with him and immediately accuses him of withholding raises, withholding resources, withholding communication, and then all the other meetings and all the other data that had fallen into the assumption pit was there. And she's sharing all of this very emotionally charged because a lot of frustration had built up by the time they had the conversation. He's sitting there and his face is just crestfallen. And he's looking at her like he doesn't understand what she's saying. And as he finally gets a chance to respond, he explains what was actually going on. And it had nothing to do with attempting to withhold or be scarce or not give raises. He was looking at a lot of other things to balance. And so he was being cautious and just waiting until he had some additional information. And he was also fighting with his boss and their boss for raises, for some more resources. But nobody knew that. And as she's listening back to him, she starts to realize all of the energy that went into the original assumption. And then all the compound interest that that assumption created, because it created more assumptions and colored more interactions. Because we're so great at finding evidence for the things we've already decided. And we don't check to see if that thing that we've already decided is an assumption or not. Because, hey, we've decided. And our minds are constantly trying to prove ourselves right. You've heard of confirmation bias? Same thing. We want to be right. We want to have it together. We want to have the answer. And it doesn't matter if it's inaccurate or if it's partially accurate but not fully accurate, or even if there's more information to be had, because our brains don't always slow down to check in, to say, hold on, is this true? Is there something else that could be just as true or more true? Is there more information to be had that I don't have? We get caught up in these assumptions. And the assumptions take us places relationally that are sometimes pretty dark. And I want you to pay attention when you find yourself ramped up, emotionally charged about someone or something. Ask yourself, do I know this for sure? Or did I connect some dots that maybe could be connected, but also maybe not? Is there other information that I could ask for? I've seen so many situations in my own life and with other people where entire relationships were broken because of assumptions made and not checked in. Because somebody else decided how you are and who you are, or who I am, and there was never a discourse, there was never a conversation. Every bit of data kept falling into the assumption pit, and everything that was contrary to the original assumption was almost invisible. There was like a blindness to it. Pay attention. You might not notice the assumption, but you might notice when you get emotionally charged or ramped up, or you find yourself in some pretty hardened frustration or judgment about someone. And slow it down. Ask yourself, what am I assuming is true? And what if that's not true or not the full truth? What if there's more information to be had? Because let's be honest, most of the time when we make these assumptions, they're usually worst case scenario. We don't often make assumptions that are flattering towards other people or that put us in a great light. Usually when we make assumptions, we're on the receiving end of a wrong, and we've been wrong, and there's something wrong with the other person or the situation. So slow it down, check in, and see what you find. If this was helpful for you, if you saw yourself in this scenario, then like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, share it with a friend, and be sure to check out this next video. It'll give you another jacket to try on and see what you see.